10:58 on a Friday. 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial. And for the first time since I met her, I didn't repeat it back. Hello, you. It's me. Whatever the day did to you, you can put it down now. You're home. If you've come in halfway, stop and go back. Parts 1 and 2 are under this. Find them first. This is the end of something, and the end's worth nothing if you weren't there for the middle. If you were there, here's where I left you. Foley went to Portugal, so it was the two of us in that building for the summer, and neither of us ever said it out loud. At 10 to 4 in the morning, with her hand still on mine at 7 seconds, I said her first name. She took her hand back the way you set down something wet, and told me to go home. And on the Saturday, Iris bought me a coffee and said she's going to propose, and asked me to help choose the ring, because nobody knows her like I do. I still can't say that ring size out loud. Tell me where you're listening from tonight, and tell me what the weather's doing there, because I like knowing what's outside your window while you're in here with me. And if you're new, the subscribe button keeps me in your evenings. That's all it does. That's all I want it to do. Now, where did we stop? Monday morning, 10 past 8, top floor of the studio, and I had been at the bench 9 minutes and already said Ms. Byrne twice on purpose. Harriet Byrne, 38, the conservator I work for, the woman whose sleeves are buttoned at the wrist in July. A year, near enough. I've started saying a year. It took me until August to manage it, and I would like credit for that from somebody, because I have been saying 11 months since June, like a woman reading an old timetable. A year I'd called her Ms. Byrne, and it had cost me nothing. I called her Harriet once, for 1 second, at 4 in the morning, and it cost me everything I had. So, back to the surname. Free of charge. The paste was still cooking. Wheat starch, a small pan, made fresh every morning, because by evening it's finished. It smells like a school kitchen. If you can still smell it, you know it's early, and I knew it was early, because I could smell nothing else in the world. Ms. Byrne. The Suffolk sheets on your side. That was the second one. She didn't look up. The Suffolk sheet, so you know, is 140 years old, and it came up out of a damp cellar in a dead man's house 2 hours from here. His family want to know what the rest of his library's worth. We've been mending that sheet since the spring, and 4 days ago we drove out and stood in the room it came from, and I found a dirt line at page 340 and put a book in the wrong pile on purpose. I want to be honest about this part, because I've been dishonest about most of it. It felt good. Saying it felt like putting a coat on in a cold room. 4 days earlier, I'd said her first name at 4 in the morning with her hand over mine. She had taken her hand back the way you set down something wet, and told me to go home. So I went home. And then I came back and built a wall out of 2 syllables and stood behind it and enjoyed myself. She works with her hands very still. That's the thing about her. Most people's hands drift. Hers stop where she puts them, like something set into a countertop. At 9:30, I brought my own tea in, from the place on the corner, in a paper cup, and it was worse tea and I drank all of it. She had made hers at the Ring, 1 cup, the way she has made 1 cup every morning for as long as there has been a bench. She didn't say anything about the paper cup. She looked at it for about as long as it takes to read a short sentence, and then she went back to the end paper, and the room did the thing the room does, which is nothing, all day long. Foley would have said something. Foley is the other half of the studio, 51, a bookbinder, deaf in the left ear and physically incapable of noticing that 2 people are not speaking. He'd have asked why I had a paper cup and then not listened to the answer. Foley was in Portugal until the end of August. 2 people, 1 bench, 1 key each. 11 o'clock. The humidity unit clicked its correction, the way it does every 11 minutes, and I counted the silence after it the way I always do. 5 clicks. That's 55 minutes. That's what 55 minutes with somebody sounds like when neither of you will go first. At noon I said it again. Ms. Byrne. Her hand stopped over the pan. Not a flinch. She doesn't have flinches. It was more like a machine reaching the end of a run and waiting for the next instruction. Her wrist stayed exactly where it was, an inch above the paste, and it stayed there long enough that I heard my own voice come back at me off the glass. She didn't correct me. That was the correction. And here is what I did not say, standing there, being clever, being cold, being 25. 4 feet behind her head was my coat, on the hook, where it always is. In the right-hand pocket of that coat was a paper napkin from a cafe, folded twice. On the napkin was a number in biro. It was a ring size. Her ring size. It had been given to me on Saturday by the woman she goes home to, and I had carried it up 3 flights of stairs that morning and hung it on the wall behind her and said Ms. Byrne 3 times instead. She lowered her hand and stirred the paste. I stood at my own end of the bench with a paper cup in both hands, drinking something I didn't like, warming fingers that were not cold. Tuesday, just before 9, same bench, same gray north light, and there were 2 cups on it. There had been 2 cups on that bench every morning for 5 weeks. She made tea for one person for years, and then one morning in June there were 2, and neither of us mentioned it, and it happened again the next day, and the next. I had stopped drinking mine on Monday. Paper cup. Corner shop. Point made. She made it anyway. It sat by my elbow all day. I watched it stop steaming, which took 11 minutes, which is 1 click of the humidity unit, and then I watched it go the color of a wet pavement and grow a skin. There's tea, she said, at some point in the afternoon. To the page, not to me. I've got mine. I know. That was the whole conversation. I've had longer ones with the bus. Now, the napkin. I need to tell you about the napkin, because it was in my coat all week and it changes the temperature of everything else in the room. Saturday. A cafe Iris picked. Iris is the woman she's been with for 9 years. A pediatric physiotherapist, works with children who are learning to walk again, and she sent me a birthday card in my first month, handwritten, posted, when she had met me twice. She was so nervous she couldn't drink anything. She wanted to propose. She wanted me to help choose the ring, because, and she said this kindly, and she meant it entirely, nobody knows her like you do. She wrote the size on a napkin. In biro, with a little heart after the number, because she couldn't help herself. It went through the wash in my coat pocket on Sunday, and it survived. 9 years of that woman being decent to me, and the one thing I couldn't destroy was a napkin. Wednesday, 2 cups. Thursday, 2 cups. I want you to understand what that is, from her. This is a woman who signs a card with one initial, because a whole name is a claim. She doesn't ask. She doesn't repeat herself. She corrects a grip once, and if you get it wrong again, she just watches you get it wrong. But every morning at 10 to 9, there was a second cup at my elbow, and every evening, there was a second cup at my elbow with a skin on it, and she filled it again the following day. I had refused something, and she was refusing my refusal. Politely. In writing, almost. The way you'd reissue a contract with the same terms. Thursday at 6, she cleared the bench. I said I'd do it. She said no. She took both cups to the sink. Mine full, cold, ruined. Hers empty an hour after she'd made it. And she washed them both. She washed the full one properly, rinsed it, set it upside down on the cloth next to the other one, exactly level, the 2 of them lined up like something in a shop window. Then she dried her hands and put her coat on and said goodnight, Nell, not Ms. Byrne. She's never called me anything but Nell. There is no wall available to her, and I had built one, and she was washing my cold tea out of a cup at 6 o'clock on a Thursday and setting it out to dry for tomorrow. I heard her on the stairs. Then the door. Then the 11-minute click. I stood in a room the color of 4 in the afternoon, at 6, with my coat on the hook and a napkin in the pocket of it, and I thought, she'll make it again in the morning, and she will make it again the morning after that. Friday afternoon, the flat dead middle of the day, and Harriet Byrne's reading glasses were not where they had lived for 3 weeks. Harriet, 38, the conservator I work for, the woman who buttons her sleeves at the wrist in July. 3 weeks ago, her glasses had started living on my side of the bench. Nobody decided this. They just migrated, the way a cat picks a chair, and I had started cleaning them. Every morning, breathed on both lenses, cloth from my drawer, set them down folded with the arms facing her. We never once discussed it. It is the closest thing to a declaration either of us has ever managed, and it was conducted entirely in silence, using an optician's cloth. I had stopped on Monday, part of the wall, part of Ms. Byrne and the paper cup, and all the rest of my brilliant campaign. So the glasses had sat there, unwashed, for 4 days, and I had walked past them 10 times an hour and left them where they were, and it had felt like holding my hand over a candle to see how long I could do it. At 11 that morning I made the call, the way I make it every Friday. 12 stems, no lilies, card signed with the initial. The 47th time I have said that sentence out loud. She didn't look up for that either, and the confirmation came in at 4 minutes past, the way it does. And by 2:30, the flowers were on a hallway table I have never seen, in a flat I have never once been inside. At 2, I went down to the yard for 8 minutes. When I came back up, they were on her side. She'd moved them. While I was out of the room, which meant she had waited for me to be out of the room, which meant she had thought about the order in which to do it. I want to be accurate here, because I've had a long time to think about it, and no reason left to be kind to myself. It was worse than being told off. Being told off requires her to spend something. This cost her nothing. She just took the object back, the way a bank takes back a card. Then she cleaned them, on the corner of her own shirt, badly. She's never cleaned a lens in her life. She cleans 400-year-old paper for a living, and she cannot clean glass, because she has always had somebody who did it, and for 3 weeks that was me. She put them on, smeared. I watched her work the whole afternoon through that smear, 9 inches from the page, head tilted to find the clear part of the lens, then tilted back, then a small movement of the shoulders when it didn't come right. 4 hours. She did not ask. My cloth was in the drawer. The drawer was 6 inches from my hip. I put my hand on the handle at one point and then took it off again and stood there like a woman waiting for a bus that had already gone. Ms. Byrne. The Suffolk sheet needs another hour under weight. That was it, all afternoon. 5 words from me and a noise from her, and the humidity unit clicking its correction every 11 minutes into the space where the rest of it should have been. What I didn't say was, "Give them to me." 3 words. I had them in my mouth about 40 times. "Give them to me, you can't see, you've been squinting since 1 o'clock, I have a cloth, I have always had a cloth. I bought it at the chemist by the bus stop the week they moved over, 90 pence, yellow, and I did not have 90 pence spare that week, and I have never mentioned that either." She squinted at a torn corner until the north light went thin. I stood at my end of the bench with the drawer shut, and my hands doing nothing at all, and I understood that my great campaign of silence was a thing I could keep up indefinitely, and she could outlast me without noticing she was doing it. She wasn't fighting. That's the trouble with a fortress. It isn't fighting you. It's just there, and it was there before you arrived, and it will be there after. The Thursday after that, 1 o'clock, and there was a paper bag on the bench from the sandwich place Foley uses. Foley, 51, the other half of the studio, a bookbinder, deaf in the left ear, and the reason there has ever been a story in that room. He brings sandwiches on Thursdays. He has brought them on Thursdays for years. Foley was in Portugal. Foley had been in Portugal for 5 weeks. So somebody had walked 4 streets in the rain. I know how far it is. I know the shop. It's a bad shop. Foley goes because he knew the man's brother, which is the only reason anybody goes anywhere. She doesn't go there. She doesn't go anywhere. She eats what is put in front of her at the bench and she leaves at 20 to 7. She slid the bag across without looking up. Inside it, the one with the pickle, which is the one I like. I have never told her that. I have never told anybody that. It is not a thing that comes up. A year of Thursdays, Foley putting 4 sandwiches on the bench, and me quietly taking the one nobody else wants, and at some point she had watched that happen, and written it down somewhere behind her face. She did this once before. In June, without looking up, and I carried it round for a month like something in a coat pocket. Then Iris came up those stairs with lunch for 3, and put the same sandwich in front of me and said, "Harriet said you like that one," and I found out that the only thing I had was household conversation. It had been said out loud in a kitchen. It had gone in the house and come back up the stairs as a kindness. So I know exactly what it's worth now, and she still walked 4 streets in the rain for it. I didn't take it. That was the plan, you understand. The wall. Ms. Byrne, paper cup, uncleaned glasses, no sandwich. Very disciplined, very 25. And here's where it went wrong. She didn't let go of the bag. 4 seconds. Her fingers still on the corner of it, halfway across the bench, in the space between her half and mine. She's a woman who puts things down and they stay put. Her hands don't drift. And that hand did not move, and it did not withdraw, and the bag sat there under it, being offered, out loud, in a room where nothing is ever said out loud. I looked at the paper. I couldn't look at the rest of it. She waited. Then she took her fingers off it and left it where it was, on my side. She didn't take it back. That is the part I keep going over. The taking back was available to her. It was the obvious move. It would have closed the whole thing neatly. She refused to. It'll go off, she said. I'm not hungry. And she went back to work as though the bag had never existed. Except the bag existed. In front of me. All afternoon. The thing I didn't say. You went to Foley's place. 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 You have not chosen a single thing in 9 years. You told me that yourself in a car. And this week you chose a shop and a day and a filling and you did it in the rain and you're not going to mention it, are you? At 20 to 7, her coat came off the hook. I heard her on the stairs, and then I heard her voice change shape, the way it does. Softer at the edges. Someone had rung her. I'm coming now. That voice is for Iris. The physiotherapist, 9 years, the one who posted me a birthday card in handwriting when she'd met me twice. It has always been for Iris. I have heard it through a door about 200 times. The street door went. The bag was still there at 20 to 7. It was still there at 8. At 8:15, I turned the front lights off and sat at the bench in the dark half of the room and ate it cold. And it was a bad sandwich from a bad shop. And I ate all of it. And the humidity unit clicked its correction into the empty studio at 8:26. Saturday, 11:30 in the morning, the arcade 3 streets from my bus stop, second time that week, with the napkin flattened out in my fist. The napkin, a cafe napkin, folded twice, with a ring size on it in biro, and a little heart drawn after the number. Iris gave it to me. A pediatric physiotherapist, teaches children to walk again, posted me a handwritten birthday card in my first month when she'd met me twice. She has been with Harriet 9 years. She wants to propose. She asked me to help choose the ring, because nobody knows her like I do, and she said it kindly, and she believed it. Harriet Byrne is the conservator I work for. 38. Sleeves buttoned at the wrist in July. The order had gone out the day before. 11 o'clock, 12 stems, no lilies. Number 48. It goes out whether either of us is speaking or not. So, Saturday. Standing outside a jeweler's in an arcade, with a wet creased square of paper, looking at a tray of rings through glass. I want to tell you what happened, and I want to tell you honestly, because everybody assumes the horror was the standing there. It wasn't. The horror was that it took me 90 seconds. I knew it before I'd finished looking at the second row. No stone raised. Nothing that sits proud. She works with her hands 8 inches from 400-year-old paper, and anything with a claw on it catches the fiber and lifts it, so it has to be flush. It has to be flat as a coin, not white metal. She has one warm thing about her, and it's her wrists in the summer, and white metal makes her look like an instrument. Narrow. Her hands are narrow, second knuckle wider than the base of the finger, so you size to the knuckle, and it sits loose at the bottom, which is fine, because she'd wear it turned round anyway when she worked. She'd turn it stone in, if there was a stone, so it didn't drag. I knew that. I knew how she'd wear it. A year at a bench, 2 feet away, 9 hours a day, and 7 seconds of her palm across my knuckles at 4 in the morning, over a wet corner, with the alarm just stopped. She has done that to me twice, in a year. Once in June over a bone folder, At 20 past 8 in the morning, 15 degrees, no explanation. Once at 10 to 4, 3 seconds of instruction and 4 seconds of nothing, both times. That is where the knowledge came from. 14 seconds and a year of not moving. That is what I was spending. It was the best piece of work I will ever do, and no one alive will ever know I did it. I went in. Warm in there, carpet. That smell shops have when nothing in them is cheap. Someone came over and asked if I was looking for anything in particular, and I said yes, and I put my hand on the glass over the third one along, the flat band, the warm metal, the one. That one. Can I see that one? They took it out. Put it on the cloth? Asked what size. And I had it. I had it in my fist. Damp paper, biro, a number written by a woman who has never done a single thing wrong in her life. I could feel my own teeth. I stood there with my mouth open and nothing came out of it. Not the number, not a wrong number, nothing. The way it is when you go to lift something and find your arm won't do it, and you look at your arm. Whoever it was asked again, patiently, sorry, I'll come back. I put the ring back on the cloth myself, which I don't think you're meant to do, and I went out through the door, and it swung shut behind me with all the lights still on inside. I folded the napkin along its old wash creases, because they were already there, and it went back in the pocket. At 11:52, I sent her a text, saying the shop was closed. The next Friday, 4 minutes to 11, the studio, phone against my shoulder, florist's hold music, and Harriet 4 feet away with a scalpel and a lamp. Every Friday at 11, I order flowers for the woman she goes home to. Harriet pays, I choose. 12 stems, no lilies. Card signed with one initial. The florist picked up. Morning. It's the standing order, the Friday one. 12 stems, lilies. I heard it come out of me. 2 syllables, in my own voice, in a room where the only other sound was a blade separating one kind of paper from another. I don't know how to describe what that was like except that everything went very level. Like standing up too fast, but the opposite. The floor didn't move. My hands didn't do anything. The paper cup from the corner shop sat by my elbow, and the hold music had stopped, and I was still speaking. Sorry. No. 12 stems, no lilies. As usual. Signed with the initial. She said no problem, love. 2 seconds. That was the whole thing. Start to finish. From the word to the correction. 2 seconds. And it cost the florist nothing. And it cost Harriet nothing. And it cost the woman with the hallway table nothing. Now, here is what you need to know, and I've never said it to anybody. No lilies isn't a preference. It isn't a taste in flowers. Iris's mother died 8 years ago, and the church was full of them. Wall to wall, every surface, the smell of it in her coat for a week afterwards. And she has not been able to be in a room with one since. Nobody told me that. That's the part. I worked it out. Because working things out is the only thing I'm for. I moved to Tuesday in my 3rd month for an anniversary. I put that date next to 2 words on a standing order, and I sat at a bench in a cold north room and understood what I had been saying out loud every week for a year, without once actually reading it. And Harriet knows. Harriet made the rule. 4 years ago, she rang a florist and said no lilies, and she has never had to say it a second time. So it isn't a word out of place. It is the one instruction in that whole order that isn't decoration. 12 is a number. The initial is a habit. Everything else on that card is a matter of taste. That isn't. 49 Fridays. And I have never once let that word out of my mouth without the other one standing in front of it. And I put 12 of them in a van. And she didn't look up. That's what I want you to understand. That's the whole of it. Harriet Byrne, 4 feet from me, did not lift her head. She was inside a 2-minute lift on a corner, and the scalpel didn't pause, and she heard the shape of a phone call she has heard 49 times. To her, nothing at all happened in that room. I said the worst thing I have ever said out loud, and there was no witness. So I don't even get to be punished for it. There's no version where I confess, because confessing means explaining why I'd want to, and there is nobody on this earth I can explain that to. I hung up. 11:04, the email came. Your order has been received. I put my coat on and went down and sat on the stairs between the second floor and the third, in the dark bit where the light doesn't reach, with the phone face down on my knee. I sat there 11 minutes. I know because the humidity unit clicks its correction every 11 minutes, and I heard it go once through the floor above me. And what I had, sitting there, was the size of it. I'd found out what I'm willing to be. I'd got as far as the word. I'd got the word all the way out of my mouth and into a phone. And then I'd corrected it, like a coward, in 2 seconds flat. Not small enough to be forgiven. Not big enough to be anything. The following Tuesday, late afternoon, both of us over a foxed end paper, and the paste from that morning had gone sour enough that you could smell how long we'd been sitting there. Wheat starch paste. Cooked fresh at 8 in a small pan. It smells like a school kitchen when it's new, and like a bin when it isn't. And that's the only clock in that room, because the light never changes. North light. The color of 4 in the afternoon at every hour God sends. Harriet Byrne, 38, the conservator I work for, sleeves buttoned at the wrist, was holding the sheet flat, and I was working the stain. 3 weeks of Ms. Byrne? 3 weeks of my own tea in a paper cup? I had built a very good wall and I was extremely tired of living behind it. So I told her the thing. I've never told anyone the thing. Not my mother, not the woman I sublet the box room off, and I've met her 4 times in 14 months, so that's not saying much. I've started that sentence twice in that room. Once in June, 3:30 in the afternoon, and she looked up and turned on the stool towards me, and a kind man came up the stairs with sandwiches and 11 minutes of Suffolk before I got to the end of it. Once in a dead man's house last month, with my hands stopped over page 340, when she came across bare boards behind me and asked what I'd just done, and I said nothing, wrong volume, and put the book in the wrong pile on purpose. 3rd time, can I show you something stupid? She didn't say yes. She put the weight down on the corner and stopped, which from her is the same as yes. You can see where a reader stopped. And then I said all of it, out loud, in order, the way I've had it in my head since I was 19. The dirt in the gutter of a book. It's not even right down the block. Hands are dirty in a way you can't see, and the oil goes into the fold, and it builds up over years across the pages somebody actually turned. And then it stops. Not fades, stops. Because there's a page where they put it down and never came back. Page 60. Page 340. Page 12. 4 seconds. That's how long it takes me to find it. I've never mentioned it to a living soul because it isn't a skill, it's a habit. Like biting the inside of your cheek. She let me finish. That's the part. She let me finish the whole thing. Harriet Byrne, who speaks in corrections, who cuts you off mid-sentence to say no, 0.5 millimeter, did not make one sound for 4 minutes. Then she reached across the bench and picked up her own book. Not a job, hers. A gray cloth thing she's carried around for a year, in and out of the studio, top of her bag, on the corner of the bench, under her keys. I have moved it 11 or 12 times. She opened it at the front and turned pages with her thumb. Slow, the way you'd count money. She stopped. Page 12. She didn't say the number. I read it upside down, which I can do, which is another thing nobody has ever asked me about. She looked at it a long time. Long enough that the humidity unit clicked its 11-minute correction and neither of us used the noise as an excuse to do anything. Her hands are the stillest hands I've ever seen. They did not move on that page. Page 12 of a book she has been carrying for a year. That's a horrible thing to be able to do. Not unkindly. Almost the other thing. Almost admiring, in the way she is admiring about a good repair, which is the only warmth she has ever let out of the building. I said nothing back. What I didn't say was that I already knew. I've known since March. I've picked that book up when she's been out of the room, and I've found the line at page 12 about 9 separate times, and I put it back exactly at the angle she left it, and I have never once let on. She closed it. She put it down in the middle of the bench. Not her half, not mine. Dead center, on the line, where the light from the window splits the wood, and neither of us moved it for the rest of the day. We worked round it. Twice I reached across, and my sleeve went over the cover, and I took the long way instead, and so did she, and it sat there in the middle like something left on a table between two countries. Wednesday, 20 to 8 in the morning. Top deck of the bus that gets in 22 minutes early, and I was writing a resignation letter on the back of a job sheet. I take the early bus, not the one that gets in 4 minutes late. Being early is free, and being late is not, and that is the entire financial philosophy of my life. I got in at 8. She was already there. She's always already there. And there was one cup on the bench. One. For the first time in a month. 3 weeks I had left the second one to go cold at my elbow, and on the morning of the 24th day she didn't make it. She'd accepted the refusal. The bench looked wrong the way a room looks wrong when somebody has taken a chair out of it, and I stood there with my paper cup and understood that I had won. 4 lines. That's all the letter was. Dear Ms. Byrne, please accept this as notice of my resignation from the studio, effective 1 month from today. For personal reasons. Thank you for the opportunity. For personal reasons is a lie, obviously. It's a very small lie in a coat pocket next to a much larger one. A cafe napkin with a ring size on it in bureau, given to me by Iris, who wants to propose to the woman I work for, and who asked me to help choose the ring. I read the letter back to myself on the bus like a receipt. I do that. I read everything back. Orders, appointments, the way she takes her tea. 4 lines, 1 month, personal reasons. It's how I hold on to a life I don't own any part of. And at about 9, her phone lit up on the bench. Face up. It said Iris. I need you to understand why that mattered. Because from the outside, it is a phone doing what phones do. 5 weeks ago, that phone started going face down. A year it had lain face up on that bench for 9 hours a day. And then, in the week everything went wrong, she began turning it over whenever it lit. Small movement. 2 fingers. She'd do it without looking. She did it in a car at 60 miles an hour in the dark, and she did it on the bench at 11:30 on a Thursday, and I stood on the bottom step of that stairwell and listened to it ring twice into a room I'd just left. I noticed, because noticing where people stop is the one thing I'm good at. And now it was face up again. It stayed face up. It lit, and it said her name, and Harriet did not put her hand out at all. She'd stopped hiding. You can hide a thing while there's a thing. When she turned that phone over, something was being protected. This week the phone lay on the wood like a receipt on a counter, and she worked, and she did not glance at it, and I understood that whatever had needed covering had been put away somewhere and the lid put on. She didn't notice me noticing. That was the worst of it. There was nothing left in her to be caught at. At 4:30, Foley rang the studio phone. Foley, 51, the other half of the studio, bookbinder, deaf in the left ear, currently in Portugal. He'd gone for 6 weeks in June. He was extending. End of September at the earliest. Cheerful. Shouting slightly, the way he does. Tell her to eat something. I said I would. So, 6 more weeks. 2 people, 1 bench, 1 key each, nobody on the stairs. I put the letter in my bag under the bench, folded in 3, in the front pocket, where it would live for 2 days. And then I spent 40 minutes holding a corner of wet paper flat with my thumb, because you do not leave wet paper unattended, standing close enough to her to feel the warmth come off her arm, saying nothing, with an envelope 4 feet below me and about 200 pounds in the bank until the 28th. Thursday, 20 past 9 at night, north light long gone, 1 lamp on, and neither of us had finished a sentence since 6. The paste had gone off in the pan hours before. Wheat starch, cooked at 8 in the morning, sour by evening. That's the only clock in the room, and it had been telling me to go home for about 4 hours. Harriet Byrne, 38, the conservator I work for, sleeves buttoned at the wrist, hands like something set into a countertop. 3 weeks of me calling her Ms. Byrne. 3 weeks of my own bad tea in a paper cup. Very disciplined, very effective. I'd built a wall and lived behind it and got nothing out of it but tired. In my coat, on the hook by the door, was a paper napkin with a ring size on it in bureau. Iris gave it to me. The physiotherapist, 9 years. The one who wants to propose. The one who asked me to help choose it, because nobody knows her like I do. In my bag under the bench was a resignation letter. 4 lines. Day 2. She put the weight down on the corner she was working and stood up straight. Why are you calling me Ms. Byrne? I didn't answer. 3 weeks. You did it 4 times today. Why? Flat. Not warm and not cold. The way she reads a measurement off a ruler and tells you it's wrong. There is a way she has of asking a question that is not really asking. It's a door already open, and she stands in it and waits to see whether you'll come through. If you don't, she closes it and you never see it again. I had a napkin 4 feet behind me and a letter under the bench and nothing left in me to defend. Because I have to. That was all. 4 words. I couldn't have got a 5th out. She crossed the floor. 2 feet. That's all it is. That's the whole distance in that room. 1 bench, 2 chairs, and a job that takes 2 pairs of hands and 1 person at a time. I have spent a year inside 2 feet of that woman and not moved. She crossed it and kissed me. Once. It lasted about as long as the correction of a grip. That's genuinely the only way I can tell you. Palm over knuckles. 3 seconds of instruction and 4 of nothing. That's what she does when your hand is wrong on a bone folder. It is exactly what this was. Same length. Same authority, the same complete absence of hesitation from someone who does not do anything by accident. Her hand was on the bench, not on me. Then she stepped back, and she picked up the bone folder. That's the tell. That's her. When Harriet has decided a thing and won't say what it is, her hands go to work. I have watched those hands for a year at 2 feet. I know that gesture the way you know somebody's cough through a wall. I stood there with the taste of nothing in my mouth, and the sour smell of the paste and 1 lamp on. What I didn't say. She's going to ask you. She's booked it. I chose the ring in 90 seconds, and it's perfect, and it's flat, because you can't have anything that catches the fiber. It's on a napkin in my coat. It's 4 feet behind your head. It's been there 26 days. The humidity unit clicked its correction into the room. It does that every 11 minutes. In silence, you count them. She put her coat on, she stood at the door and held it, waiting to lock up, because there are 2 keys, and we both have one, and we still leave together. And on the wall behind her, on the calendar, in my own handwriting, tomorrow, 11 o'clock, flowers. Friday morning, 10:47, at the bench, in that gray north light, both of us standing exactly where we have stood every Friday at that hour for a year. Neither of us said anything about the night before. I want that written down. 14 hours and not 1 word, and the paste cooked fresh at 8, the way it always is. I took the letter out of my bag and put it on the bench. 4 lines, for personal reasons, 1 month's notice, and I laid the whole thing out for her. I'd had 2 days to get it right, and it took about 11 seconds. I'll work the month. Foley's back end of September, you'll manage till then. He can take the Suffolk valuation, the dead man's library, it's mostly done. I'll leave the calendar in order. The flower order's set up on the account. It doesn't need me. It runs itself. I remember being proud of it. That's the shameful part. Because it was clean, you see. I go. She keeps her 9 years. Iris keeps her Friday flowers, and never finds out what she nearly lost. And the only person who pays anything is the person who was always going to pay it. Everybody else stays whole. It is the single most generous thing I have ever done in my life. I did it standing up, in 11 seconds, at a bench, at 11:45 in the morning. She read it. 4 lines takes 8 seconds. She took longer. Then she picked it up. She didn't rip it. She didn't sign it. She didn't put it down. I can't let you go. And that hung there. That's an employer's sentence. You understand that. That is a sentence about staffing. A 2-person studio in August, with Foley in Portugal until the end of September. She could say it in a tribunal, and it would mean nothing at all. Except she doesn't say things she hasn't measured. A year I have listened to that woman weigh every word before it leaves her. That one came out unweighed. In a voice I have never heard her use, holding a piece of paper she would not put down. She didn't say Iris's name. 9 years she has gone home to that woman. The 4th of October is booked. A Saturday, 7 weeks off, a place picked, and a second place in case of rain. And no ring, because I couldn't say a number out loud in a shop. She didn't say what she'd do. She didn't say the other thing. She was never going to. And I read everything back. That's what I do. Every instruction, every order, every appointment, out loud, like a receipt. Friday, 11, 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial. 50 Fridays of it. It is how I have held on to a life I own no part of, and I have done it since I was old enough to be told things. She said I can't let you go, and I did not repeat it back. I didn't say anything. She knew what that was. She's the only person alive who could. She's the one who's listened to me do it every day for a year. The silence where it should have been was the loudest thing either of us managed in 3 weeks. The clock said 10:58, so I picked up the phone with my letter still in her hand. Morning. The standing order, the Friday one. 12 stems. No lilies. Card signed with the initial. I got the 2 words right. Whatever else I did that summer, I want that on the record. I have never in my life been more careful with anything than I was with those 2 words. I didn't read it back to myself. At 11:04 both screens lit. Hers and mine, on the bench, between us, at the same second. Your order has been received.